Thank you very much. Thank you, John, for inviting me. And it's I'm not from academia. That's my first point. So I was teaching optics and photonics at the University of Strasbourg in France 20 years ago, but I lost my academia DNA and I gained my entrepreneur DNA here in the Silicon Valley the first 10 years, and then after that. Since none of these startups really made it, I decided to join some larger companies like Google X in 2010 to work on the Google Glass project, and then a little later in 2015, Microsoft to work on the HoloLens project, which is what I'm going to talk about today. Not only HoloLens, but also other MR systems, mixed reality systems around. So. I'm going to try to, keep you excited. It's very difficult to keep you excited after a talk like this by Professor Shenhui Fan on nanophotonics. So I'm also going to try to talk about nanophotonics, but nanophotonics that are actually applied to products today that you can buy. So let's see if you get excited about this. Optical challenges, paving the road to the ultimate mixed reality experience. So that's the title I chose. We just come out from half a century of 2D display technologies, actually more than half a century, with limited immersion experiences, even with a gigantic flat panel, TV, computer screen, laptop, tablet, cell phone, watch, whatever you want, and replace it with a near-to-eye immersive display, which takes the field of view at about the maximum 40 degrees and takes it up to 220, which is actually possible today. So it's a paradigm shift on how information is actually presented to the eye. If you're interested, next week there's actually a SID conference in San Jose, and it's going to be very interesting. There's a lot of talks about the AR, VR, MR, smart glasses over there. Gartner cycle. If you want to get excited about new technologies, you go to the Gartner cycle. Okay, and Gartner cycle summarizes what is interesting today. So that was 2017. You can see augmented reality, which just dropped from its peak of inflated expectation, and VR, virtual reality, slowly making it to a product. Now, what happened in 2018? VR just dropped. VR is not there anymore. Something else came up, mixed reality, which was just about to go down after the peak of inflated expectations. VR, that doesn't mean that VR is not interesting anymore. VR actually made it to a commodity, made it to a product. So it doesn't have its place anymore on the Gartner cycle. Whereas mixed reality and augmented reality, see-through displays, see-through near-to-eye displays are still there. Why is this exciting? Really, after a talk like this, I really have to push, to get you excited about the technology and nanostructures. Smartphone sales saw their first decline in Q3 2018. That was end of last year. Yes, total. Some of them actually do really good. Tablets also saw their first decline ever in Q3 or Q2 2018. Some of them actually do very good. Oh. This guy's here. So, of course, this is very, very stressful for the valley here. And the smartphone is eventually going to die, we know this. And then, according to Tim Cook, things are going to get really crazy. So what's after the smartphone? Well, there's the next big thing. Everybody agrees about this. So what is it? Well, as a wise AR market analyst said this year, to say that AR would simplify everyday human life is a gross understatement. It will radically change the way we consume digital information, and this is more precise. So if this doesn't define the next big thing, I don't know. So the next big thing for Microsoft is the next computing platform, and this next computing platform is the mixed reality platform. Two main pillars. Comfort. It has to be comfortable. Comfort has two declinations. Wearable comfort has to be light, small, center of gravity close to the center of gravity of your head, no thermal issues, and it has to be visually comfortable also. No conflicting 3D cues, for example, no other visioning discomfort features. It has to be immersive also, and This is the only color that you will see in my slides. It has to come at low costs. Okay, so comfort comes in many declinations, has to be untethered, wide IPD, interpupillar distance coverage, so it covers a large population, large angular resolution, 20/20 vision, no screen door effects, size, weight, center of gravity, small, verdance accommodation conflict. We're going to talk about this later. This is related to the vision comfort, high brightness, high contrast, no ghosts. Nobody wants to see ghosts. Pupil swim is something that you get when you have when you have presbyopia, just like me. You know, in the first 6 months, when you use your glasses, you have pupil swim. You know, and slowly your brain adapts to it. But with a VR headset or AR headset, you can't have pupil swim. Thermal management, very important, because you have a computer there, you have an Xbox there, and you have a lot of sensors there on your head, and it shouldn't cook your head, which is really, really important, and no fans, of course, blowing there. Immersion, field of view, large field of view, arm's length interaction, so the field of view has actually, it's a three-dimensional concept. It's not only X, Y, okay, I have a field of view. No, the Z component of the field of view is very important also. We're going to see this. World-locked spatial audio is part of the immersive display. It's a sensory effect. Immersion is a sensory effect. It's display, audio, and then many other sensory effects. Foveated and peripheral displays, hard edge occlusion, active dimming, soft edge occlusion. We're going to talk about this, HDR, and gesture sensing. And at the confluence of comfort and immersion, of course, you have the motion to photon latency, which has to be as small as a 10 millisecond, maybe 5 millisecond. And of course, a 3D display world locking. Your holograms are actually locked onto reality, no matter how your head moves, how your pupils move, or how your body moves. And all this, I mean, some of these are actually linked to a critical technology, fast, accurate eye tracking. Okay, so here are the challenges. There are many more, but I chose 7 because we only have 45 minutes. 7, we're going to start with the field of view. So these are the challenges paving the road, again, referring to the title of the talk. Also, what we're going to see is it's impossible actually to solve these challenges and have a small headset. It's just impossible. You know, either you just put the key under the door and go away and do something else, open a pizzeria, or you go back and you actually analyze who is the computer, who is the detector. Detector is not a camera. Thank God it's not a camera. It's the human visual system, which is way more limited than a camera. And by analyzing the limitation, the specifications and the limitations of the human vision system, we will be able to address these challenges. And we call this a human-centric design, human-centric engineering. And in the case of optics, human-centric optical design. So the human visual system is very complex, but it's also very limited. So here are some of the field of view fractions where you can actually, you have the fovea. The fovea is only 3 degrees, and that's where you actually have the high resolution. The fovea is actually something that grows. That you're not born with a fovea, that grows after you're born, you know, depending on if you're ramping on the floor or if you're actually standing, the fovea grows a little differently. Text recognition, 20 degrees, symbol recognition, color discrimination, and then binocular vision and monocular peripheral vision in X and Y. There's the same thing. This is the stereo overlap, the binocular field of view here. And the right field and the left monocular field, the fovea, the parafovea, and you know, most industries actually define a 40 to 50 degree field of view, over which you want to have some kind of a high resolution because your eyes can actually move around without generating strain. Your eyes can move for larger angles, but they will generate strain. So when you move your eyes to these extreme angles, your head will move. And this is about the field of view in which the eyes can move unconstrained. The combination of unaltered see-through field of view and digital display field of view create the mixed reality immersion experience. Here are some examples. Of course, a VR system doesn't have a see-through. even though you know, some are called video pass-through or video see-through. And this is something that's gonna generate a lot of interest in the next years, but today there are not many devices that have this, a 6DoF and also a video see-through, but you're gonna see this coming. The Oculus doesn't have it. Google Glass, well, a very large see-through, see-around / see-through, very small occlusion, very small field of view also here. Magic Leap 1, large field of view, 50-degree field of view, but only about 70-degree see-through. It's kind of a steampunk type glass. And then this is HoloLens V2, which was unveiled, I think, 2 months ago. 52 degrees display and a 220-degree see-through, which is really important, especially for the applications that we're targeting, enterprise applications, not consumer. This is also important, the perceived field of view for the user is very subjective. The user is not an optical engineer and will measure the field of view and say, oh, this is 50-degree field of view. The user will say, I think it's a big field of view, or I think it's a small field of view. This is a subjective perception that is linked to the quality of the display, not the size of the field of view, but the quality of the display, which is really interesting. So high MTF, high contrast, lower distortion will actually create a sensation of a larger field of view than the field of view that you have. So perception by the user is everything. And this is sometimes difficult for optical engineers to conceive this. You know, they might take a camera and say, oh, this is a 53-degree field of view, it's larger than a 50-degree field of view. Well, for a user, a 45, actually we did some tests with 40 and 50, 40-degree field of view seems to be way larger than a 50-degree field of view if the quality of the image is actually better. MTF resolution, color and so on, color depth and so on. Angular resolution, very important. Again, these are the different, for each eye, the different field of view regions, the blind spot. Cannot talk about the field of view here, but the blind spot is here, the fovea, the macula, the paracentral area for the right eye and the left eye. And you can see that the angular resolution in arc minutes goes from about one arc minute. Actually, teenagers can, you know, perceive in their fovea angular resolutions down to, you know, a fraction of an arc minute. But let's keep it at 1 arc minute, which is already pretty good. And when you go away from the center in degrees, well, you can see that the angular resolution actually drops up to 10 arc minutes or even more at 30 degrees. Only 30 degrees, it drops from 1 arc minute to more than 10 arc minutes, which is amazing. And this will allow us to generate a device that provides the perception of high resolution without generating high resolution everywhere. In other terms, optical foveation, and we'll see how you can actually integrate optical foveation. The human visual system is complex and limited, has also a lot of aberrations. So these are the aberrations of the human eye. So if you take, this is a longitudinal chromatism in diopters, so the change in focus. From blue to red, you have about 2 diopters difference. This is huge. This means that this is your eye. This means that, you know, red is focused here, green here, and blue here. 2 diopters is really, really amazing. And the image on the retina, this is a flower. This is what you have on your retina. That's not what you see when I look at a flower. The flower doesn't see like this. The flower looks like this because I have my computational imaging working in my visual cortex that puts everything together again. But if you look at the image on the retina, it's really not what you perceive, especially when you go off axis. And the flower looks like this. But the image seen by the viewer is like this. So optical foveation is key to human high resolution experience. This is the Mona Lisa. Here this is a qualitative measurement, GPU rendering, number of pixels required, and perceived resolution by the human eye. So of course, everything is low resolution. That's not really good. Everything is high resolution. That's not really good either because it puts too much burden on the rendering. Now, if you have a fixed central foveated rendering, always in the center, it's kind of okay, but that's not really what I want to see. When I look at the Mona Lisa, I want to see this, you know. So this is a gaze contingent foveated rendering, which is linked to an eye tracker and renders in high resolution in my immersive space exactly where I look at, over my fovea and parafovea. But what is even better is to have, instead of one display, have two displays, two different displays, two different panels, or two different scanners, or two different whatever you wanna use in your optical in your display engine. You have a low resolution display. It could be, for example, a cell phone panel, you know, in a VR, and I'll show you an example. And this could be a micro display, such as an LCOS display, you know, high resolution, low resolution. But again, it's important, for example, to see the smile of the Mona Lisa, which is not in the center of the image. And this is a gaze, again, a gaze contingent optical foveation. So there's a big difference between just foveated rendering and optical foveation, for example, by using two different optical systems and steering the high resolution small field of view in the angular regions where you're gazing at. This is actually the most interesting part. Weight, size, and center of gravity. Okay, so this is again related to the wearable comfort. Now you have to look at the optical backbone of a mixed reality system first. When you have a display engine, you have some imaging optics, you have an exit pupil expansion to cover a large interpupillary distance, a large population. Then you have the combiner optics. These are the optics that combine the see-through, your reality, with the digital information. Have some gaze tracking there, which actually use part of these optics here. And then you have the 6DoF head tracking, gesture sensing, and depth mapping. And this is an example of a HoloLens V1 optical engine where we use an LCOS light engine. The exit pupil is actually here. And this is the waveguide combiner. We use a waveguide combiner. There are many different ways to design a combiner. It can be a free space, it could be a hybrid free space waveguide, or it could be a pure waveguide combiner. This is a waveguide combiner with nanostructures in there. This is how the optical engine looks like. HoloLens V2 is a little different. We use a laser scanner based on two MEMS. One is a fast MEMS, resonant MEM. The other one is electrostatic MEM, and the exit pupil is actually in the center. Here instead of the side, and we will see how we can actually increase the field of view. So the lasers are here. They shine on a fast MEMS, 1D MEMS, and then you have some relay optics, which put all these different pupils back together, and they hit a slow MEMS here. There's also a transmissive lens here, a small slow MEMS, and then generate the exit pupil over here. So the exit pupil of the display engine is the entrance pupil of the combiner. So the display engine job is to create the image and also create a pupil, over which the image is usually at infinity. And we'll see afterwards why. And the exit pupil of the display engine is actually the entrance pupil of the combiner. And the exit pupil of the combiner is what we call the eye box. That's where you put your eye. That's where you see the image. It's another view. We actually unveiled HoloLens 2 in Barcelona at the Mobile World Congress a couple of months ago. And we unlike with V1, we actually dedicated this device to enterprise for a few reasons. The first reason is there's no consumer market today. That's the first reason. Second reason, the comfort level is not there for consumer. Third reason, the costs are not there. So there's no market, there's no comfort, and there's no cost. So, this is a recipe for disaster. So no consumer. No consumer. Minimizing weight and size of combiners, free space combiner optics. Well, you have the flat half-tone combiner designs which are very simple. You have a micro display here, collimation lens that bounces it's basically just a simple lens, and then a 50-50 beam splitter. This is actually in the Apache helicopter. So you might think this is cheap, but that's actually a $35,000 monocular combiner which uses, by the way, a CRT. Anybody knows what a CRT is? Yes, a cathode ray tube, which is sitting on your head. And when the military has a winning horse, usually they don't change. Although a lot of people are excited about quantum dot, inorganic micro-LEDs, high power OLED, silicon backplane, and so on. No, just take a CRT, and it works. Just to protect the most powerful nation on earth. So, however, they actually see, when they see a new horse, a winning horse, they actually bet on it. So we got $500 million from the army to generate a mixed reality headset based on our V2. So it's the largest PO ever made since VR, AR, and MR exists. This is not investment. This is actually a PO, purchase order, $500 million. Defense worked a lot on AR combiners with large curved combiners. Usually they're called bug-eye for some obvious reasons. And again, this is not for enterprise, and this is definitely not for consumer. For consumer, you have single large curved visor combiner designs with a smartphone display, such as the Meta 2. The company actually went bankrupt, doesn't exist anymore. It was in Redwood City. Dream Glass, Mara Prism, or Leap Motion, the same thing. A little smaller form factor, you can have a bird bath. Bird bath is basically a reflective lens here that reduces the size for field of use of, here we have field of use of about 90 degrees. Here with a micro display and the air bird bath, we can go to field of use with Nreal or ODG R9 of about 50, 55 degrees. There's a lot of Chinese OEM display engines also incorporating this bird bath today. If you want to get smaller, increase the wearable comfort, you get a little more fancy, just like Toshiba, where the lenses have actually embedded Fresnel structures. So the lens is not bug-eye anymore. The curvature of the lens, the reflective lens, is actually smaller because there's a Fresnel. If you're not happy with the Fresnel, you can put a diffractive Fresnel in, which is done by glass up. So, of course, it's index matched because you want to be able to see through the Fresnel. You want to be able to see through the diffractive. So you have to coat your diffractives and then index match it so that the light goes through and you can see your reality unperturbed. And if you even want to get smaller, like these glasses here, well, you include a hologram, a volume hologram in there. A volume hologram that actually works in reflection mode, but is transparent for the field. So you have a MEMS scanner here. This is Intel Bond. And North Focals is a Canadian company. You have RGB lasers here. In the Intel Bond, it's actually a VCSEL array. And then you reflect the beam here on the combiner, and here you have a volume hologram, which is recorded to provide a reflective lensing function. And in some cases, it's actually cast. It's not injection molded, it's cast inside a prescription lens. And usually it's a photopolymer hologram, such as the Bayer Covestro photohologram, which, of course, the Bragg selectivity is tuned so that it works well with this incoming angle and these different wavelengths. Usually the spectral bandwidth of these holograms are very small. Freeform prism combiner designs, very interesting and very old. The microdisplay is here. These are freeform surfaces, a TIR reflection, and this is a half-tone reflection here. And the field is collimated, and you have here the compensator, which is a freeform also. This is actually diamond turned and injection molded. The mold is diamond turned, metal diamond turned, and injection molded. So you have a unaltered, quasi-unaltered see-through and a good combiner. So minimizing weight and size and center of gravity on combiners. Let's look at waveguide combiner optics. And we think, a lot of ours also, that this is the ultimate form factor for AR combiner. We saw that the free space combiners tend to be a little bulky and complex. So the simplest way is a flat single mirror, okay, outcoupler. Here you have the Epson Moverio BT300 and BT30C, which came out last week. the microdisplay is here, injected through a prism, TIR in the guide. By the way, that's not a waveguide, that's a light guide. You know, a waveguide is, I mean, what we saw before is a few modes propagating. Here you have millions of modes propagating. It's a light guide, but it's an abuse of language. Everybody uses waveguide. The other abuse of language that you will see is, oh, a hologram. You know, a lot of people call a stereo image a hologram. So other abuses of languages when it comes to light field displays, and we'll see this. This is even more horrible. But again, you know, you have to go with the flow. So this is a waveguide. Micro display here, this is the Konica Minolta. It's a flat reflector, but with a lens, so it acts like a curved reflector. It's actually a reflective hologram in there. Curved, you can also make the substrate curved, but this is you know, complicates the manufacturing and also the design. So this is the Zeiss. They know one or two things about optics. This is Zeiss 2's smart glass. Two bonded curved shells with coated Fresnel structures, which you see here and here. And this is the extractor. So you have an OLED panel here, which is injected by a freeform prism here. It hits the half-tone coated Fresnel, and the Fresnel actually extracts it and acts as an off-axis lens to extract the pupil. The pupil is not replicated. It's the same pupil as it enters. It's spread, but it's extracted. There's an architecture continuum for mirror-based combiners. You have a single half-tone holographic mirrors, multiple half-tone mirrors, and fractured metal mirrors. So here you have the Epson Moverio, the Google Glass, the Epson Moverio BT200. This is the BT100. You have the Zeiss 2s. Then when you go to multiple half-tone mirrors, you have the Lummus extractor. You can see the different mirrors here, which are half-tone. Or the OptiVent, which are different prisms that are on top of the waveguide. So there are different concepts with the guide actually in a bird bath architecture, where the guide is actually, the mirrors are actually inverted, such as in a Google Glass, but with different mirrors. And you can also curve them. And you can also fracture them. There's a company in Korea called Letinair that does this, pretty nice. So you have the same mirrors, you just fracture them so you can see through. And at the same time, you know, you have an extended depth of focus also because the mirrors are very small. You can also have a bird bath, you know, you have a lens here, so the display is here, TIR, bounces back off the curved lens here, always in that guide here, and then bounces off these mirrors, boom, in your eye. And you can even make it curved. iBox. Another of these challenges. And we saw some of the scanner devices, such as the Intel Vant and the North Focals. They typically have a ridiculously small iBox. You know, it's very, very difficult to find the image when you have them on. The iBox is basically the exit pupil of the imaging system. So, for example, the QD laser or the Epson, the Brother Air Scouter, has a MEMS mirror here and a reflector and bounces directly in your eye, which is nice. Very small pupil, but a huge extended depth of focus. Extended depth of focus is good because the image is always sharp, no matter where you accommodate at. No, it's not good. The reality is not like this. You superimpose a reality, which is your reality, which has a specific depth of focus depending on your own eyes, and you superimpose on it something that is always in focus. That actually creates a visual conflict, three-dimensional Q conflict. So these guys are only interesting when you project text, because for the perception, the user perception, text is never part of reality. In a mixed reality experience, text is always digital. And it makes sense to have it in focus no matter where you focus at. But if you're looking at a pink elephant that is sitting right in this chair, I don't want this pink elephant to have an infinite depth of focus. I want to have this pink elephant sitting in that chair, the same depth of focus as the chair itself, to look real. So in order to do this, you in order to increase the eye box, you can actually replicate the exit pupils. This is done in the Intel Vaunt. I have no time to really get in detail how it's done, and also what we do with HoloLens V2, we actually replicate the pupil. There's also all-in-one shell design where you have a partial transmissive, sparse emissive display, which might be a micro OLED or ILED. You have a transparent curved plastic shell, and you have partial reflective MLA microlens arrays through coating or holographic Bragg selectivity. These lenses are see-through without distortion. What is really nice is you can actually build up synthetically your field of view. You can build up synthetically your eye box, and you can build up synthetically your angular resolution with a fixed microdisplay, which has a fixed resolution, a fixed PPI, pixel per inch. It's fixed. You can build with this a foveated angular resolution, where in the center of your field of view you have higher resolution, and then it drops. There's a nonlinear transformation between the PPI, pixels per inch, into pixels per degree. You cannot do this with one lens. You can do this with an array of lenses and some tricks. This is an example, Lusovo, Portugal, they call this the display. Increasing the eye box in waveguide combiners. Okay, this is what we call exit pupil expansion or exit pupil replication. It's not new. This is 1987. You know, people have done it before. This is again a CRT here in a head-up display in a car or in a plane. And they use holographic couplers, grating couplers, or partial mirror couplers. So single dimension exit pupil expansion, you can do it with, again, a series of mirrors, half-tone mirrors, and each half-tone mirror extracts part of the field of view to create part of the eye box. You can do this with prisms also. You can do this with volume holograms, like Sony did it, and a few others actually replicating this. The Lumos array of dielectric mirrors, which replicate the pupil in one direction, has been integrated by many others. The problem with 1D pupil expansion is you want to have an eye box that is decent in two directions. So if you only expand your eye box in one direction, what do you do in the other direction? Well, you have to start with a large eye box at the beginning before even injecting it in your waveguide. So your light engine becomes large in this direction because you need a rectangular pupil. Okay? This is done in the Lumos DK50. This is done in this one. And if you have the luxury of having a waveguide that expands your pupil in two dimensions, your light engine can actually be very, very small, such as on the Digilens crystal here. And then the exit pupil is replicated in two directions rather than only in one direction. This is horizontal direction, this is vertical direction. 2D pupil expansion, Digilens, Microsoft HoloLens, wave optics. This is done with gratings. These are linear gratings. These are linear holographic gratings. These are linear slanted surface relief gratings. And these are surface computer-generated holograms, which are optimized by iterative algorithm. You can call this topological optimization. So people have done this, it's like 50 years old with genetic algorithms or simulated annealing or direct binary search or, whatever you want to use. So example of 2D EPE waveguide combiners, you have the Vuzix Blade, the Digilens Crystal, the Wave Optic, the Magic Leap, and you might have heard about this, and the HoloLens V2 also. These guys actually raised close to $3 billion to develop this waveguide technology. Not 3 million, not 3 billion. This is the K-vector. Let's see what happens in a two-dimensional exit pupil expansion. Well, you have a single input pupil over which the image is located at infinity. Okay, so this is your field of view injected. This is, in your K-vector, these are the limits of total internal reflection here. Okay, so your field is coupled in the waveguide by a grating, right, so that it fits actually the TRR condition here. and the largest angle permissible. And then you hit a redirectional grating, which is a leaky grating. Could be a holographic grating, could be a diffractive, could be a metamaterial, could be a PB grating, could be a resonant waveguide coupler, could be anything. And then you hit the extraction grating, which actually generates your exit pupil. Now, this extraction grating has to be transparent to the field and has to be high efficient for the TIR field. So you have to optimize this. In the HoloLens version 2, it's a little different. We actually couple the light in both directions. We have a larger field of view, couple the light in both directions, and we cut some field of view here, you see? We actually inject light that is at angles that are lower than the TIR condition. So that light is lost in the guide, doesn't propagate in the guide anymore. But we actually push them in both directions. So what is lost here is actually gained here. What is lost here is gained here. So if you combine it with a single element, this one here, you combine both field of views. One lost a little bit from the left, the other one lost a little bit from the right. And this field of view is larger than the TIR condition. You put them together, you have a nice field of view, which is larger than what is dictated by the TIR condition. The core of waveguide combiners are the in and out couplers. So surface relief couplers, it's a zoo. You have blaze gratings, you have slanted gratings, and these are dimensions of the order of for these the order of 100 nanometers to 250 nanometers. Slanted gratings. So these are slanted. They have to be fabricated as slanted structures. These are top-down binary gratings and also analog surface relief gratings, or CGHs, computer-generated holograms, which are optimized by, back in the days we said iterative optimization. No, I think today we say topological optimization. But that's basically what people used to do, in the 60s with simulated annealing and genetic algorithms, and today, still the same thing. Optimization of 3D nanostructures, so the slanted grating, for example, this is what we use in HoloLens. They look like this, about half a micron period here, the depth from about 30 nanometer to 400 nanometers. So this is the TIR condition, okay, in your guide. And you want these couplers, these in couplers and the out couplers to work, first of all, over the entire field of view of your image, okay, which should be at least as large as a TIR condition, and also over the entire spectral bandwidth of your source, which could be an LED. In this case, you would have 30, 40 nanometer, or laser, which would be a fraction of a nanometer. So if you have just do a back of the envelope calculation of your grating. You have a bandwidth like this. This is actually the angular bandwidth of your grating. You also have a spectral bandwidth, but here we only show the angular bandwidth. Remember, this is a TIR condition. So you optimize it. You use a few turns of simulated annealing, or just a very simple steepest descent, with all these parameters. And then, of course, you have to include also fabrication constraints. Fabrication constraints for random fabrication errors and systematic fabrication errors. Not only the fabrication of the master, but also the fabrication techniques that are used to replicate the master, the nano-imprint lithography, which also has its own fabrication limitations. So this is all in the iterative algorithm, this topological optimization. And of course, you optimize the index also. And with the same type of gratings, you can actually get a much larger index. Now, of course, you have to find somebody that can actually fabricate this. Not only one, but millions. Not only for just one PO, but for, costs that will get reduced over time in order to allow consumer markets to pop up. You can do the same thing with holographic couplers. So usually they're sandwiched, they're not surface relief. These are index modulations, so they're volume holograms, in coupler and then leaky out coupler to create an iBox. You can use thin transmission holographic polymer dispersed circuit crystals like Digilens. You can use thin reflection holograms, which is a photopolymer 16 to 17 microns, Covestro, Bayer, DuPont, Polygramma. Or you can use thick reflection transmission grating volume holograms like a Konya, which has just been bought by Apple to do exactly this. They have a 100 to 500 micron photopolymer, and they actually can phase multiplex many different holograms, exactly like some people try to do metasurfaces. You know, they've done multiple very small angular bandwidth and spectral bandwidth holograms that are all phase multiplexed in this 100, 500 micron photopolymer. This is a Kogelnik plot, the incoming angle in degrees and the reconstruction wavelength. So of course you want to increase your field of view. So if you have one laser centered, for example, at 550, this is an efficiency curve for transmissive reflection hologram, sorry. This is the lower field of view for the laser line, and this is the larger field of view. So you have about 17 degrees here field of view. So if you use an LED that expands your spectral bandwidth to 20 nanometer, which is not much, you actually expand your field of view from 17 degrees to 34 degrees. It's the same hologram. It's just the source that is different. So the hologram bandwidth is multiplied by 2 by not doing anything to the hologram, just by changing the source. Of course, your field of view on the left, if you use green, the green is going to be slightly different from the green on the right side of your field of view. So there's no free lunch, but you can increase your field of view this way. You can also use a resonant waveguide gratings. So by the way, this is a real waveguide. So this is a waveguide on top of, with corrugated gratings on top of the light guide, technically light guide. The light is coupled, not in the light guide, but in the waveguide, which has a different index and has a buried grating in there. And that grating is then coupled, that light is then coupled into the underlying light guide, which is then reflected by TIR and expanded here to produce an iBox. You can use some design gymnastics using couplers in the third dimension. You can go both directions in X and Y. It's always interesting to use the 3 dimensions, because we're living in a 3-dimensional world, but a lot of engineers, took about 20 years to figure this out. They were living in a 1D world for 20 years. And just recently, people are trying to, play with the 2nd dimension, input in both directions, and the 3rd dimension have elements that actually work in reflection and in transmission at the same time, in both directions. That expands your possibilities enormously. Dispersive and achromatic waveguide coupler technologies, we talked about prisms, we talked about diffractives, these are, and holographic, these are highly dispersive. If you don't want a dispersive coupler, you just take mirrors. Mirrors are simple, mirrors work very well. You ask the narcissic, Cro-Magnon or prehistoric man who actually looks into a flat water, and it doesn't do anything to the color. So it is achromatic. It's an achromatic coupler, which is really interesting. Hybrid, diffractive, refractive. Refraction has dispersion, diffraction has dispersion, but the dispersion is in different directions, so you can actually compensate by, fabricating gratings on prisms. You can have a phase multiplex holographic coupler in which you have very small spectral bandwidths, and you actually phase multiplex them, not space multiplex them, but phase multiplex them in order to get a large field of view, completely achromatic, or you can use something that is new and that is attempting to do something that is a million years old already. flat. Now, of course, this is really flat, achromatic metasurfaces. This is about 10 microns. So it's still pretty flat, you know, considering the 1 millimeter or 2 millimeter thickness of the waveguide. And this also. Spectral dispersion. So gratings are dispersive, holograms are dispersive. In a symmetric configuration, well, you cancel the dispersion. Dispersion is completely canceled. In the angular space, not in the linear space here, but in the angular space. So no matter what you inject here, they all come out straight. Focus dispersion, if you have an image that is not located at infinity and you inject it in your waveguide, at every outcoupled position, you have an object that is located at a different depth. That's not good. So how do you get around this? Well, first of all, you have to start with a pupil that has the image at infinity. You get out, the image is at infinity, but maybe you want the image to be at 2 meters, which is a little more, or 1 meter, which is a little more interesting for a mixed reality application. Then you add, for example, a half diopter lens, which takes the image from infinity to 2 meters, half a diopter. You have to compensate on the other side with a positive half diopter lens. So you have an unaltered see-through. Or you can just write the lens into the coupler. So these gratings, when you look at them under the microscope, they're not really straight, they're a little curved, and it's basically an off-axis lens. So this half diopter lens is in here, and you don't need a compensating half diopter lens here anymore, because the see-through field is not affected by that lens. Only the TIR field is affected by that lens. It's a good solution. RGB waveguide combiner architectures, you want to have RGB in the smallest stack possible. So, of course, the easiest way is to have one color in one guide. So you have a spatially multiplexed input pupil. So this is a color image. So this is red, this is yellow, and this is green. Okay, so the yellow goes out here, and then the zero order, which is your green, will then be intercepted by the other slanted structures and will be extracted here. And if you put your eye here, all the colors will be overlapping. That's exactly what we're doing. You can also do other things. Instead of having a spatially multiplexed entrance pupils, you can have spatially color demultiplexed entrance pupils, where you have the yellow and the red focused here. Hitting this totally reflective in-coupler, and then outcoupling it with transparent simple binary grating. The other input coupler is located at a different location, so the light doesn't go through anymore here. The green is demultiplexed from the red. It's very simple. You just demultiplex your illumination if you use an LCOS or whatever panel. And you couple it in here. This is done in the Magic Leap solution. Magic Leap and HoloLens V1 use one color per guide. So you have 3 guides, one for red, one for green, one for blue, and you combine it. Low-hanging fruit is using 2 guides for RGB. So you have a first guide in which you propagate, let's say this is the red, this is the blue, and the red. The blue field of view and the red field of view. If you couple it with a dispersive element, the red field of view is diffracted more than the blue. Or maybe this is green. Let's say this is green and this is blue. The green is diffracted more than blue, so the blue is totally coupled by TIR, and half of the green is lost because it's just diffracted more. Just because you have a dispersive element there, a grating, or a metasurface that produces a grating, or a hologram, or whatever coupler you want. So what you do is you have a second guide, which again couples green and then red. And the other side of the green here is lost. Here you have the red, the right part of the field of view lost. Here you have the green part of the field of view lost. And if you combine them, you have the entire blue field of view, the entire green field of view and the entire red field of view. So 2 is better than 3. It's smaller and it's lighter. Of course, everybody wants 1. So you need to find out a way to couple RGB and diffract RGB in the same direction. It's basically a chromatic coupler. A mirror can do this. For grating, it's a little more complicated. So if you have a large field of view and you attempt to TIR couple these 3 field of views, RGB, in the guide, you lose part of the blue, you lose part of the red, and you can actually have the entire green in there, which is not good. Or you can shrink the field of view in the direction of the TIR propagation. But then you have all 3 colors in a guide, but you lose the field of view. Field of view becomes 3 times smaller. What else can be done with a waveguide combiner? Well, potential future applications of waveguide combiners include smart windows. So AR and MR is interesting. You know, even if there's $100 billion market or $120 billion market, it's just a drop in the bucket compared to what you can do with other markets such as smart windows. But you have to start somewhere in order to develop your technology. So, for example, you're in the streets, in Paris, for example, and you're traveling, you're walking, and then you have a retail here, and you look through the window and you see real objects. So what you can do also is you can have a projector here, and this smart glass has outcouplers, an in-coupler here and outcouplers here, and you can actually project augmented reality display in there. You can also have a IR flood LED here that projects IR illumination 850 on your face, and your face is actually, the image of your face is actually coupled back into the guide with a different grating coupler, then outcouples to a CMOS camera. It's just like you have your CMOS camera right in front, but it's actually a transparent periscope. You know, the thing that you have in a submarine. It's a transparent periscope. So you don't know that there's actually a camera there, but the camera actually looks directly into your eye. To do eye tracking, to do face recognition. Say, oh, hi, Miss Smith, these are the jewels that you looked at last week. We have a special price today. This is all private, yeah, because only this person can see it. This person is actually scanned through that camera. LPC, low concentration photovoltaics. You have the photovoltaics on the side of the window. Part of the visible to 1.1 micron is trapped in all directions with these transparent couplers and then launched onto the PV cells. You can also have passive IR management. The summer sun is actually, the IR of the summer sun is reflected through these couplers, and the winter sun is transmitted. Can also be coupled in and heating up cogeneration systems, a fluid line for AC. So you can actually do a lot of stuff. So grating couplers for AR is good because, we have a hype today and everybody wants to work for AR, but the real return on investment for the manufacturers, I think, is comes a little later with smart windows. Non-conflicting 3D cues, I'm not gonna do, how long do I still have? Yeah?
We are out of time, like we're going to 3 or 4, but we can...
Okay, but I started much later. So divergence accommodation conflict in fixed focus stereo, I'm going to go very quickly over this, is a visual discomfort when you have a fixed focus stereo display. For example, in HoloLens or many other head-mounted displays, you have a fixed focus at 2 meters. And if you think that the vergence, the conflict between vergence and accommodation can only be half a diopter or quarter diopter, well, you have a limited Z space in which you can actually project your hologram. See, I speak about hologram, but it's actually stereo imaging. For half a diopter vergence accommodation conflict limit, you can actually go from 1 meter to infinity, but you miss these regions here, which are very interesting for mixed reality, where these regions are the close-up hand display interaction and the display interface regions. So in order to, so it's very, very, very important. You know, here you can actually have up to 1.5 diopter conflict. Here you might have a half a diopter conflict. The 1.5 diopter conflict is actually going to create serious vision discomfort. So you have to mitigate. You can actually tune your focus with varifocal, or you can have multiple focus rendering with multifocal. You can change the focus by, I have some examples. I'll show you examples. You know, Professor Gordon Wettstein here at Stanford moved the display in front of the lenses. You can also have micro lenses and move these lenses very, very, very shortly. The Oculus Half Dome also moves the display, and the 3M variable focus compound air gap pancake lens moves also, but it moves the lenses very, very, not a lot. You can also change the focus in your display engine, such as Avegant, or you can change the focus in the combiner, such as the University of California, at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte, the formable membrane combiner. You can use a waveguide, and you can change the focus in the display engine. But then you can only extract one pupil. If you want to expand your pupil, you have to use tunable lenses in front, negative lens and positive lens in front, and on the other side of the waveguide. You can also play on the polarization in order to have a see-through that is p-polarized and a display that is s-polarized, which reduces the weight and the size of the elements. This is an example here. Fractional light fields, very interesting. You know, guy actually got Nobel Prize in 1908, and he called it, Gabriel Lippmann, he called it integral imaging, an integral display. So it's not new. It's not new at all. This is a 2x light field display, so 2 renderings and 2 directions. This is a 3x light field, a 5x light field, and the nice thing is, from a point source, is when you increase the number of light fields, you can actually reproduce the wavefronts that are coming from this point source. When you actually trace the wavefronts coming from n light fields, you actually reproduce the exact wavefront coming from a real object at a real distance, although the focus of this display is not here, somewhere else. This is the magic of the light field. You can also use digital holographic imaging. Not going to enter into details with a phase-out cost. It's basically a computer-generated hologram that is calculated in real time with an iterative algorithm for a per-pixel display. Immersion experience, you want to have everything in line here for variated display with stereo overlap and verdance accommodation conflict mitigation, but on the peripheral display areas, you don't need it. You can do this with different ways, enlarging the field of view with a single display system, or having 2 different display systems, such as 2 different lenses, 2 different prism combiners, or even a cell phone panel and a micro display, which is the Varjo VR system, which is now, which you can buy now for $6,000 actually. Sensor fusion, the last thing, very important. Mixed reality is only as good as your sensor fusion. You have a very good display, but if your sensors are not good enough, head tracking, eye tracking, depth scanning, your experience is not good. These are the different sensors that one might use, the different fusion processes, the actions, and the display rendering. For depth map sensors, you have structured illumination, time of flight, and stereo imaging. This is our sensor fusion architecture in HoloLens V1. It's not a GPU, it's a HPU, holographic processing unit, which is a custom silicon, which talks to all the sensors, okay, and does the rendering. And there's also the late stage reprojection, rendering in between color sequences, depending on how you move your head, to have this motion to photon latency below 10 milliseconds. Okay, that's the aim of the sensor fusion. This is how it looks like. The second generation HoloLens HPU includes a deep neural network for artificial intelligence to scan in 3D your surrounding, but to scan also a chair and know that what you scan is a chair, what you scanned is a computer, what you scanned is a person or a dog or a cup of coffee. And we use deep neural networks to do this. This is the last slide. It's just a video. Oh, there's no sound. Actually, oh yeah, right here. Okay, somehow the sound doesn't go through. Well, anyway, you get the message here, how your reality has to be scanned with the depth scanner in order to position and world lock your holograms onto reality to play with reality occlusion. And also one thing that we have to solve is the transparency of the hologram. This is occlude reality before projecting the hologram, so the hologram looks more real. Okay. Well, that was my last slide. Thank you.